Maternal Health Focus is the title of our regular segment that we're running on HITLAB in the monthly symposia. So happy to be that moderator. And yeah, my background, I'm regulatory affairs and currently with Ellume as head of North America regulatory affairs. So this month is the Maternal Mental Health Month. And this month there was also an inaugural report card that was released, giving a lot of information about the state of the states in the United States. So I am so pleased to be joined by Kirthika Parmeswaran, CEO at Vital Start. And I actually met Kirthika on the HITLAB platform and also on the Breakthrough One platform. So a pitch for that for those of you who are interested. So Kirthika, so glad to have you join me today, and a little bit about you and Vital Start.
Yes, it's absolutely an honor to be here. I think I've been associated with HITLAB and at their events and different initiatives that Stan and Jerry and others have been doing for so many years. So I'm really excited to be here and join this growing set of voices that are talking about women's health and mental health, the impacts of that. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirthika Parmeswaran. I'm a Wharton alum and the founder and CEO of Vital Start Health. At Vital Start Health, what we are doing is addressing this very key question. Everybody wants to hold the baby, but who holds the mom? And that's the question we're looking at through a preventative lens, starting from fertility, preconception, through pregnancy and postpartum. So Zina, I'd like to share a little bit more about some of the exciting things we're doing at Vital Start. And one of the key things is we are using virtual reality to provide the best possible care to empower both the practitioners, the clinicians, as well as the patients who are going to be using this platform. Our platform is live, and we've already launched at a couple of clinics and very excited to see where this can go.
Yeah, fantastic, Kirthika. And as part of your work in that, what were your thoughts on the state of the state, so to speak, on maternal mental health?
Yeah, I mean, the first thought is, of course, this is dismal. This is not what you would expect for one of the richest and the wealthiest nations in the world spending $3 trillion in healthcare. But I think at the same time, just to put on that practical lens, it was expected as well, because we know what's happening on the ground here. And we know that there's a lot of work still remaining to be done. A lot of issues with access, a lot of issues with screening not being ubiquitous, and also incentives. And for me, that incentive structure is the biggest that I feel we should maybe shine some more light on, Zina, as we go through this. But certainly, through Vital Start, our aim is to disrupt this. It can take up to $19,000 per mother for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, which is that maternal mental health we talk about, and can take up to 5 years, according to Mathematica. So we want to disrupt this through innovation, through that human in the loop, through bringing something that's accessible and equitable for all.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned some key points here about, the preventative aspect. And incentives. So what are your thoughts on barriers or the opportunity to enable the disruption you're mentioning?
Yeah, I think the previous speaker, Paula, was mentioning about this being an underinvested area. I mean, you can't repeat that enough. There certainly needs to be much more venture dollars coming into this area, which has such a pervasive impact, multi-generational impact. And at the same time, this not only should be happening from the industry, from employers and others, but has to come from CMS itself through reimbursements. And I think that is where it all begins. Because we know in our healthcare system, we're really dependent on the payer structure, we're dependent on reimbursements to drive the go-to-market strategy or drive that commercialization. And as part of that, we have the FDA pathways to go through to get that reimbursement potentially. But these are the different aspects of the ecosystem that one has to keep in mind. And I think, Zina, you brought this up in a very nice way, and we can certainly unpack this further.
Yeah, and I think what's really compelling here is where is the right point of interface with the patient or the woman who is maybe is even preconception, I think in our earlier conversations we were having. So really upstream. And also there are trends that are in terms of incentives and support that are very different in other countries, it seems. So there are specific aspects that I think are needed, as we discussed, as came through in the state report, to actually support the mother or the to-be mother through the process of having recognized care and what's really needed. And how do you look at those gaps and how to address those gaps to really build that value-based care model that, as you say, there's an incentives barrier, which needs to be, kind of more in a ubiquitous platform. How do you close those gaps?
Yeah, I mean, what a great question, Zina. This is something that keeps me up at night, and I'm sure many other CEOs in the space are thinking of similar things. So the first thing for us at Vital Start, it is our vision, to be able to deliver joy. We recently rebranded to bring that about as well. And so we are looking at this journey from a lens of someone who's been through this. I've been through this myself, come face to face with that stigma, the anxiety and the discrepancies in the healthcare system. So it's very clear it's a very vulnerable journey. So let's just accept that. This is not something, even if you're the most educated person, you've read everything, so many surprises that come at you through this journey. It's absolutely unpredictable. So it's a vulnerable journey. And we feel that it's really important, along with that self-guided support, along with AI, there should be the human encounter. There should be a practitioner encounter, whether it's a licensed professional or maybe someone who's a perinatal mental health expert. So with that, now let's unpack that incentive structure. So if you look at the providers right now, when I speak to providers as part of our customer discovery, the biggest thing that we get is we do not want to be in network with payers because they don't feel here is someone who's got a PhD and they're not getting compensated enough. So they literally have to negotiate their rate based on their credentials and their experience with every payer. And then that happens with every state. So it gets really complicated. So most people want to be out of network. So that's one issue. The other thing I notice is that, yes, we want to move towards value-based care, but there's not much incentives for measuring care at all. Like we have the Fitbit, we have, the Apple Watch, we have other things that provide us physical health information, physiologic data, maybe even through computer vision now, but we're not seeing that same thing in behavioral health. So I think there has to be incentives to track that behavioral progression. Some of that is coming with the remote therapeutic monitoring codes, but that opens up another can of worms. It's not enough for you to monitor. You still have to go through an FDA pathway, which adds to more risks for a startup or need for more money, which we know that investment is an issue. So there is that piece here of bringing measurable behavioral health, which we feel very strongly about. We have that embedded in our platform. It's an evidence-based platform that provides care, tracking that longitudinal scorecard for a client going through this. So that is one aspect, the measurable part. And I think the third aspect is equity. We know really well that, care is not equal. And a lot of this, if you look at the social vulnerability index, is based on your zip code. So how do you get that best care, adapt, be agile to providing different sorts of care? And we began with, mobile VR, low cost VR with that lens of being completely equitable. And now we are seeing that there are some areas like reproductive health where that may not be the case. And so we now have both options, the high-end option, the low-end option, depending on where you are and what you need in your journey, so that we can remove all these barriers that we see, whether it's access, whether it's, the costs, whether it is the time, how can we get to you? How can we provide that best care and impact the families? We have this vision of impacting 1 million families. How do you get to that? I think all of that fits into that go-to-market strategy. But of course, the commercialization piece is the biggest. And that's where this is the last part that I want to bring up, is that reimbursements. So the current reimbursements that are there is screening. That's also not there in all the 50 states, but it's at least something the CMS has, and you can decide to do some of that with the payers that support it. So that's a great thing. The other thing that we have, of course, is psychotherapy codes, health behavior intervention codes. So those are good. We could use that. But there are still some newer codes like virtual reality. We do have codes for it now, but these are tracking codes and not completely baked in with every payer. So we are, there's still that route to go through, and then remote therapeutic monitoring. These are the codes that I have studied, and I'm noticing that these are things one can use to drive that impact. And I'm being very open about this because I know probably there are many others here who are on the same journey as me. And I think it's fine. This is such a huge problem. 1 million women going through this each year. We all have to work in this together. And, there are phenomenal startups looking at this from different aspects, whether one is through community and peer support, one is through AI, one is, like us, through virtual reality, and there are some with social support. So I think we need all of this. We need a village to get this done, Zina. But although it is challenging, I'm still very optimistic that we're going to get over this. There is so much of that awareness and emphasis right now. I think the timing is just right.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, it's a long journey for sure, but the awareness, the acknowledgement, the recognition seems to be building. And I think, you spoke about incentives, and, OBGYNs are actually not trained to do the screening you were mentioning, to kind of bring up in the early stage, catch upstream, or even in the preconception stage. And so what's really clear here, and what you're bringing through, is that technology does play a role here in actually enabling the data, enabling evidence. But we also have to look at the dynamics at play here in terms of what are the payers looking at, and consistency of the type of data that the payers are willing to support, so that it's not just having the technology, it's having what is that data going to enable to actually provide that care. Because then you mentioned the barrier and the access issue. Well, if you don't have the support to get into the health economics of providers and clinicians actually being able to do proper care, is not going to get to the delivery of those who need it. And actually, as you were saying in an earlier conversation about moving the needle. So would you agree with that kind of as an overall summary, that these are really critical dynamics, and including policy, regulatory, all comes together, but you really got to take it piece by piece. Do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah. So that's another great question, Zina. Around 10 days ago, I was at the NIH. We had a maternal innovation workshop there. And that was exactly what we did there. There was a payer panel, there was an investor panel, there were, innovators also pitching their solutions. And it was clear that the payers still felt that maybe there's not enough pertinent data that's very specific. So I agree with you, Zina. I think a lot of this is going to come down to payers or self-insured employers who are going to have to pay for all of this downstream. So that's the note. I think there is work to be done, but we at least now see the path forward.
Not to mention advocacy, and women, as we're talking about in this symposia, is so important both for women's and mental health. So thank you so much, Kirthika.